Listen here, group. Today we're going to talk about a song by Ben Folds called Landed.
Welcome to Erratic Sleep Patterns, guys.
So, October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and I'm actually working on a very long video that currently is very boring, and it's just me reading out facts about domestic violence. And domestic violence is something that's actually very important to me, having been grew up in a domestic violence household, been in domestic violence relationships. I have friends who have had domestic violence relationships. I was a 911 call taker and dispatcher for 14 years, taking many domestic violence calls. And it's something that I've studied for years. And the thing that I know, looking at most of the responses that I've seen when domestic violence comes up in the news, is that there is a huge lack of understanding of domestic violence, the signs, and all of that sort of thing, which is unfortunate because it means people don't necessarily know that they're in it and they don't know that they're committing it. And without that knowledge, there's no way to stop it. I do intend to continue to try to figure out how to make this video that I'm working on work as something that could be an educational tool. But until I get that figured out, I wanted to go over a song by Ben Folds called Landed. So this song is about coming out of a domestic violence relationship, and it's a really beautiful song, I think. It starts out, we'd hit the bottom. I thought it was my fault.
And in a way, I guess it was.
I'm just now finding out what it was all about. One of the things that I know from personal experience and also from reading is that a lot of times you don't even really understand the abuse you're in until you're away from it. It changes your brain when you're in it, and you don't necessarily understand what's going on as it's happening. One of the difficult things about domestic violence is it's often slow creeping, and so everything starts out really great in a lot of cases, and that's why somebody who seems like the perfect mate is a red flag to me. But like the person seems perfect, and then slowly things start getting, I think it even starts off as strange, and then it gets bad. And often by the time that it gets bad, you're really stuck in it. There are different ways that people can use to control you and keep you in the relationship. And I haven't stated this, but I'll state it now. Domestic violence can affect anybody, any race, any gender, any age, anything, right? It's non-discriminatory. It gets everybody. And what I really like about this song is that this comes from a male perspective. And while statistically females are more likely to be involved in domestic violence relationships, a lot of men are also in domestic violence relationships.
Moved to the West Coast, away from everyone.
She never told me that you called. It is a common tactic in a domestic violence relationship for there to be isolation, isolating the victim from their family, their friends, so they don't have support, so they don't necessarily have input from people that they trust to point out when things aren't right. Not to say that even if they had that input, they would hear it. If you're a friend or trying to support somebody who's in a domestic violence relationship, you'll find it difficult to reach them. At times, you'll find it difficult. They'll seem crazy,
Till I believe I was a crazy one.
and they are in a way
And in a way, I guess I was.
because their view is warped. Their understanding of the situation is warped. And again, it comes back to that. Like a lot of times when you're in it, you don't see it until you finally get out of it, and you don't know to get out of it until it gets to an incredibly difficult point. Back when I was still in love, till I opened my eyes and walked out the door and the clouds came tumbling down and I said,
Goodbye, goodbye, I tried.
and I twisted it wrong just to make it right.
Had to leave myself behind.
And that is in those relationships, like it's difficult when you love somebody so much and you want things to work and you don't. I think unfortunately a lot of us don't understand what a good relationship looks like, especially early on. And we hear things about like working it out and all this other stuff. And so a lot of times we'll try to, it's not that bad. they're not, they're not that bad. You put the blame on ourselves, that sort of thing, to make the relationship seem like it's better than it actually is. You don't get to be yourself in a relationship like that. And you will at times not recognize yourself. You won't recognize the stuff that you put up with. Like it changes you. It's like the pet cemetery, right? Like it changes you. You come back out of it wrong too. And I've been flying high all night. When you get out of it and you feel like you're free, it feels amazing. Keeping in mind, I know it's not simple to leave. I know that it's very difficult, and I also know that statistically, the most dangerous part of a domestic violence relationship is the leaving. I do understand that. But if you can get out, if you can, it seems scary. It seems impossible. It seems like you won't be able to build up again. But even with all those fears on your back, if you can keep pushing yourself forward, it feels exhilarating to finally find out who you are and or remember who you are and grow into what you want to be. The daily dramas she made from nothing.
So nothing ever made them right.
In some relationships, you can find yourself just constantly being wrong, the other party, doing that intentionally. There is a component to domestic violence that not all cases, but mental health can play a large factor in it in both sides. So certain personality types, certain personality disorders, and certain mental health issues can increase the likelihood of uh, committing domestic violence. But in the same way, a lot of personality disorders and mental health issues can increase your likelihood of being a domestic violence victim. And so in some cases, that makes it even harder. So the perpetrator may not recognize what they're doing because they can't see it. And then, same thing with the victim. They can't necessarily see it, or they're more predisposed to blame themselves for other people's actions and that sort of thing. Codependency in a relationship is a very big problem in domestic violence, and it makes it harder to get out of.
She liked to push me.
That's physical violence. That's one of the poor takes I see on the internet a lot is that, like, if it was so bad, call the police or whatever. There are different kinds of domestic violence, and most of them you can't prosecute on. And if you can, it's very, very difficult. Physical violence is difficult too if there are no marks. She liked to push me and talk me back down till I believed I was the crazy one. So gaslighting is a psychological domestic violence tactic, and it can make you feel like you're crazy. I've been in that situation where I have a hard time, and to this day, I'm still dealing with, trying to recognize that, like, that I can trust myself and my thoughts and my brains. In my other video, I talk about my experience with gaslighting and how hard it was, where I actually have a good memory, like, people talk to me about how good my memory is, but, when you're being gaslit and you start questioning yourself and your senses, and so I used to try to write everything down, but a lot of times in a domestic violence situation, your partner is going to go through everything you have, right? Your journals, everything like that, emails, everything. So there's really nowhere safe. So I have a habit now of over communicating with people I know so that I can, tell them, "Okay, this is what happened, this is what happened, this is what happened," and that way in like a week, let's say, if I'm if the person's telling me that didn't happen or it didn't happen like that, I can go to the other person and be like, "Am I wrong?" And that sort of thing, and it's been years since I've been in any relationship, so, it's not really as necessary, but it's still that part of me of, like, "I said this to this person, they said this to me, right, and bring up any supporting documents and that sort of thing just in case I need somebody to help me, like, trust myself again. It's insane what these relationships can do to you, and if you've never been in one, bless you, I hope are never in one, but if you've never been in one, it's hard to understand, and I find, maybe you don't have empathy for somebody in a bad relationship, but it's you lose your mind. I mean, you lose your sense of self. You lose, trusting yourself. You lose your autonomy. You lose so much of yourself in these relationships, and it's not as simple as just being like, "Oh, you're treating me poorly. I'm leaving." Like it comes at you from so many different sides. Physical, emotional, psychological, financial. Like there's so many different types of domestic violence, and at times, especially if they're all used in conjunction with each other, you're trapped and you can't see a way out and you don't trust yourself and you don't believe that you can't get out and it's terrible. Anyway, until I was a crazy one, and in a way, I guess I was. I get this, like, kinda hurts me.
Treading the sea of a troubled mind, had to leave myself behind.
Singing "Bye Bye Goodbye, I Tried." And then if you wrote me off, I'd understand it, because 'cause I've been on some other planet, so come pick me up, I've landed. It's not uncommon to lose your friends if you're in a domestic violence situation. On one side, you have the isolation, which, is intentionally cutting you off from your support network, and on the other side, the people who try to stay, it's a lot emotionally because they do often see it better than you do. And if you're in a situation where you really don't see it and you don't get it, and you're constantly pushing back, and it's like, no, you don't get it. You may be pushing them away because, like, oh, they just don't get, my love for this person or this person's love for me or that sort of thing causes a friction. And it's really difficult. It takes a lot of patience to stick out and wait for your friend to land. It's such a difficult and trying and awful situation for everybody inside and out. And then this one is a little silly, I like it. Down comes the rain of the telephone czar, it's okay to call. Meaning she's not there to, take say that they're not there and prevent him from talking to whoever he wants to. The telephone czar is no more. Feel free to call me, I'm back. And I will answer for myself. I really like this song. I don't know, off the top of my head, I don't know any other hopeful end of a domestic violence relationship songs. Just this one, and it really gets me. Okay, so we broke it down lyrically. I cried a little bit. It's not even just beautiful lyrically. The music in this is so gorgeous too. I mean, it's not a surprise. Ben Folds is an incredible composer, but I mean that piano to start.
And in a way, I guess it was.
I mean, listen to how lonely that sounds, right? Listen at with the piano and just his vocal there.
I'm just now finding out. Moved to the West Coast.
And then it picks up a little bit.
She never told me that you called. Back when I was still
Back when I was still in love. But here we get into the chorus, and then listen to how it picks up.
in love. Till I opened my eyes and walked out the door. And I twisted it wrong just to make it right. Had to leave myself behind. So come pick me up. I've landed.
And it's so gorgeous, the piano, the strings.
So nothing ever made them right. But I opened my eyes and walked out the door. And the clouds came tumbling down. Treading the sea of a troubled mind. Had to leave myself behind. If you wrote me off, I'd understand.
Sorry. It's just so gorgeous. And it's so sad, but it's so hopeful and it's so happy that it's just it's so amazing. But that's why I wanted to highlight it, not just, in within the full album like I usually do. And why I thought it was a good substitute for the currently 2-hour video that I have that is not interesting to anybody. I'll leave some resources. Like I said, I know it's not as simple as just leaving. I know that it is very dangerous to leave. If you can get out and get to better, even if you can get out and get to nothing, it can be better. I hope if you're in that situation, you can feel like you've landed too. Anyway, it's important for me to talk about domestic violence, to teach about domestic violence, and I will continue trying to find ways to talk to people about it, because the more we know about it, the more we can recognize if we're in it, the more we can recognize if we're doing it and try to stop it. Hope you're okay. I hope you're working toward better, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.
It's over.
Thanks for watching.